Hi, everyone. Welcome to my podcast today. I'm here with my good friend Bridden, who I met at the Ramdas retreat in December of 2021 in Maui, and who's living out in the desert in California right now, right? Somewhere near Joshua Tree.
That's right, like right on the edge of Joshua Tree National Park. So I gave up the city life and have come out here to be a just a total desert mess.
Yeah, and he really means it too. Like you're really in the middle of nowhere. I've
Right, right.
seen pictures. Incredible. Must take an incredible amount of just like, I don't know, courage and adventure to just take that step.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can talk about that a little bit actually. I We felt really drawn here without knowing why. And we'd come out to Joshua Tree. When you live in like San Diego or LA, it's great to take a trip to the Joshua Tree area. People come out here to like do mushrooms, get in touch with nature, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And do a lot of soul searching. There's lots of yoga and
Yeah,
lots of
very sacred, right?
exactly. And like you feel it too. It's in the land. Like the land itself has this sacred magic to it. Native American tribes for years have lived out here, and they're very connected to the land. So you feel all of that energy, like thousands of years of that is here in the earth, and I think that's why it's special. So we'd come out, and I never wanted to live in the desert. I've been a city guy, and my wife has always loved living out here. She wanted to live out here, and we it came to the point where we just felt like we had to do it. Something was pushing us. We felt like a change in the winds, and here we are. We actually came out and stayed at a little trailer park, and we were sitting outside, and I was like just looking out across the desert thinking like, should we actually make the move? Like, I'm a signs guy. I like to have signs. I love synchronicity. So I'm laying out by this like on a pool deck, like looking out across the desert. And as I'm thinking, like, I need something to confirm that we're supposed to move here. It was the weekend we came to look at this house. A dove came and like it flew up and landed at my feet. It was holding a little branch in its mouth, like a little twig with some leaves on it. And it just like stopped right in front of me, looked up, dropped the branch, and then flew away.
Oh
And
my
I was
God.
like, that's my sign. I grew up very Christian initially, so to have like if you're familiar, if anybody who's listening isn't, with the story of Noah and the Ark, everyone probably is. Uh, when they're out at sea, like looking for somewhere to like land, they want to find land. That's the promise. Like God sends them in the book, the dove flying with the olive branch in its mouth to show them that there's land
Um,
coming. So like I'm sitting there and I see that. I was like, it's my olive branch. It's my olive. This is the moment. And so Annie came up to where I was sitting, and I was like, "We're moving here."
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. No, I actually had forgotten that. I didn't know that was exactly how that happened
Yeah.
in the arc. So that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, for such a like, especially someone like you who I know is like, connected and guided by like spirit and intuition and for you guys to do that move, yeah, the energies must have been calling for it. And is it a challenge to be like no like family or friends around, or do you like that?
Yeah. What made it easier is that a lot of friends were leaving San Diego at the same time. They're getting called to different places. The same time that we told our best friends we were going to move here, they just started laughing and they're like, "We were so nervous to tell you we're moving too." They hadn't
Oh
actually
my
told us
gosh.
yet. So it all just happened at once. And it is kind of hard to like not have community. Um, and I've been figuring that out and kind of working through that. But I've spent a lot of time being really alone on the spiritual path. It's been very solitary for me, mostly coming out of very Christian background and leaving that and exploring other things and coming to find Buddhism and Hinduism and all these things and pulling like the richness of those traditions.
Yeah.
A lot of I have to give credit. Many of the people who I was around before are very loving and very accepting and still very close. But there is a little bit of like you feel a little ostracized, spiritually and
Yeah.
socially. And you're also like, how can anybody else understand what I'm learning and going through and experiencing unless I just dominate all the conversations? And I'm like, you want to know what I know? Uh, and I don't want to do that. So I've become used to feeling very alone, sadly. But what I've discovered is I find community in like very unexpected places. Like I met you and all the people that we know in Maui, and that was incredible. I'm an unexpected place. It's a Ram Dass retreat. You know, there's the people are going to be there. That's my community, and
Yeah.
I wish we could have that all the time and not just like once or twice a year. Um, so what I've been focused on lately is trying to find a way to bring spiritual community together. And there's a lot out here. There's like meditation, there's, you know, like I said, there's tons of like yoga stuff going on in Joshua Tree. But specifically what I've been thinking about is like Sunday mornings. I miss going to like a group, like getting together and just like singing to the divine, singing the songs, doing the thing, having some sort of like sense of togetherness. And I would like, how can I create that? Like I wish there was a church or something like that that wasn't specifically focused on a single religion. I would like a place where everybody can come together of all backgrounds, of all beliefs and traditions, and just honor the divine in their own way, but together. And the more I talk about that, the more my friends tell me it sounds like a cult. And I'm like, I know. Uh, but I would love to start one.
I know I that cult word is a hard word because
It is.
people can apply it to pretty much anything, right? And like anything that if it seems a little weird to them, it's easy to to call it a cult. Like it's easy to call
Right.
anything that, right? But like it's just a term. But yeah, I mean, I think people getting together for sadhana, spiritual practice, or anything else is like in that realm is so beautiful and so important, and I'm blessed that I do have a lot of that where I'm at. We don't really have a kirtan thing going on, but I was just in Utah and one of our friends out there that lived in Rishikesh for a few years, he does really great like kirtan and nada yoga, like sound yoga things, and I got to go to a couple and it was really incredible.
Oh, that's so good. The
Yeah.
kirtan is what I'm missing lately. And I do that every day by myself. I got a harmonium last year and learned to play. And so I mostly, you know what? I mostly just know Krishna Das songs, but they're so good. And
That's all I know too.
I can do my
You
own
can play
Krishna
them?
Das concert. Yeah.
Wow.
Not as good as he does, but like
Still, that's awesome.
I love to do that. And I felt like when I first got it, I was like, I'm gonna get confident and I'm gonna be able to share this with other people. And I don't have that yet. I'm not at the point where I'm like, I need to set up local kirtans and like invite people to come together. I'm so self-conscious about it. But when I'm alone, I get just totally in it. And it's beautiful. I like having those little solitary practices too. But
Yeah,
having the balance between the solitary and the community, I think is important. So
yeah, you do get to do a lot of, that solitary part is definitely good because I'm sure you get to spend a lot of time working with your own heart, your own thoughts, like, not being able to grasp out and just like fill yourself with stimulants of like being around people and doing things. But another thing is that my Alec is his name, or Sri Shala, my Nada yoga teacher, he, teaches the kirtan like I was just saying, and he said it was hard for him to start doing it with people. Like the courage and the fear. And he was like, it took a couple years before he's like, just recently I can really like enjoy it when I'm doing it. So he's like, it was a really great sadhana in itself, just bringing it out, just bringing it out like that.
right. Oh, it's so good. I think, yeah, there's something about just doing it that is helpful. And it's something I'm actually having to work through because I catch myself in judgment toward other people who are like being really open about like, let's do the kirtan together. Let's do and like bringing, you know, I catch myself judging other spiritual people. And I go, they're just doing it for the attention. And I think my fear is that I'll just be doing it for the attention if I do it. And there's something between me and them that I need to work out in myself.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I think I always think back to what Ram Dass, who for anyone who knows, Britain's got some Ram Dass picture, knows or doesn't know in the back. And that's like we're connected through that tradition and through that bhakti, that loving tradition. But Ram Dass used to always say, we can't wait till we're totally pure to act, and
Ah, that's good.
I remember that because even in my teaching Kundalini yoga or taking people to India, it's like I'm not totally pure. So there's still, ego in it, but it's
Yes.
also like helping them and me. And it's like I can't not do it just because I'm not like all the way pure yet.
I caught myself doing that today too. It's like we're going to be having this conversation today, and I'm looking forward to it. But I was sitting in my room earlier, and I had this moment of just I'm getting angry and angsty about things, and I just see the human ego, like part of it bubbling up, and I can see it in myself, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a somebody today. I'm such a somebody. Who am I to go on my friend's podcast today and talk about these things? But also, how stupid would it be to not and be like, let's wait till the day I feel more pure? That would be pathetic because what we're here to do is the human experience. So here we
Wow.
are.
Man, yeah, I felt really human today too, but I don't know, I just love what you're saying. Those are great lessons, and it reminds me of like, and I'm so glad you did. And I know I looked back, I first texted you about this back in March. So I'm super,
Yeah,
this must have been the time.
it must have been the time. Everything happens in its perfect time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad it got called in. No, when I was in, I've been teaching Kundalini yoga since I did teacher training. So I've been teaching for like a year. But I noticed uh a lot of the people I did the training with, amazing people, could be amazing teachers and want to be. But again, it just makes me think back like because of that fear kind of a lot of them always say to me like I'm just waiting till I'm a little more ready, like I'm just waiting to be a little more ready, but I try to tell them I'm like I don't think it ever comes. Like I just had to start doing it and then it's just like yeah.
True.
um but
It's
yeah.
true. A simple example of that is I started this bookstagram, a long time ago. Every book that I was reading, I'd write a little review of it and share it on there. And I was really excited about it. I did this during COVID because there was
On
nothing else.
Instagram.
Yeah. My name is Britton Vanderbush, so it's Britton Vander Books. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, I missed a couple of posts and I was like, I don't feel like I've let the book get into me enough yet. I'm going to wait a while. And then I kept doing this with every single book that I read until I got to the point. I looked at the shelf today and I was like, in the amount of the year that I haven't posted on there, I've read probably these like 60 books that are on this shelf.
Wow.
And maybe not that many, but I looked at it and it was like, this is just built up because I'm just waiting to be ready. What am I waiting for? I should have been posting. So what I did today is just put up a whole thing. I was like, here's all the books I've read. If you're interested in any of them, ask me and I'll tell you about the specific one you're asking about. But I'm not going to write out every individual.
Now
That's
at this point, yeah.
so what we do is like we build up this. I'm going to wait till I'm ready. I'm going to wait till I'm ready. I'm going to, and it never comes. You just have to do the thing.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love that you do. I mean, that's a great idea. I've done some posting of like when I like whatever, like 10 books that I'll like a lot just to share them. But I
Yeah.
love how that's a great idea. It's really, and I love how you like study and read like the spiritual literature like I do also. And I've noticed you do because you're always like I don't know if people mention a book, you always seem to like know it and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I read a
no,
lot.
that's awesome. And I think I don't know. I love that, man. It's been such a important part of my sadhana, my spiritual practice. And I know in the Yoga Sutras, I think they call it like self-study. I forgot the Sanskrit word, but I think it's so important because like in a lot of spiritual teachings, we emphasize that like the knowledge has to be in the heart, not in the
Mm,
head, or like you can
yeah.
only get whatever by books and this and that. But I think it depends where you're coming at it from. Because for me, like the study of different like spiritual literature is part of my bhakti, like my loving, like it opens my heart It reminds me about God. It like connects me with the energies of whoever's book I'm reading, whether it's like Yogananda or Ramdas or Tibetan Buddhism or whatever. I find it to be such a, I don't know, so powerful for me, really. Like that's been an important part of my life.
That's so true. It's good. Yeah, I would consider reading part of my bhakti practice. Which you'd think it's the practice of knowledge or wisdom, or what's that one called? Jnana.
Yana yoga.
Yeah, so you think it's that, but it's kind of both. They're all tied
Yeah.
together. It reminded me, a friend a while back was telling me about, he went to, I think it was a Sadhguru event, and somebody asked him, like, how do I know which type of yoga is my yoga? Like, which one do I do? And he responded by telling a story of, like, I think it was called, I don't remember what this story was. I'm going to butcher it, but I'll give you the gist. Uh, he gave the analogy of a tent being held up by several different posts, and each post is a different yoga. And without one of them, the tent falls down. The tent topples over in a storm. So like all of them are connected. They're all one thing. And he was like, they'll in different times, different ones will appeal to you, different
Yeah.
ones will appeal to you, but they're all connected. So like the bhakti and the knowledge, the wisdom, it's all one thing for me. I really feel that. Now I'm trying to, like, I'm like, okay, maybe I gotta move around more. I don't do physical movement very much.
Now you're
And for
feeling that's like
that,
the like yeah, like the Raja yoga.
yeah, right.
Yeah, it
It's
is. I mean,
all of it.
we're studying doing a Bhagavad Gita book study with Swami Satchidananda's translation, and he was like he always called it integral yoga, but like combining all those aspects of karma yoga, bhakti yoga, Jnana yoga, Raja yoga, like the asana and breath work and meditation, the daily action in life, the devotion, the cultivation of wisdom. And it is all full circle. Like when I go to the Zen Buddhist stuff I do, like the meditation retreats and stuff, a lot of people, they're very like those Zen Buddhist retreats are like very strict, very, you know, like wisdom and meditation centered, all that type of thing. So people sometimes think of it as like maybe not so like loving or heart opening, but yet it leads to the same place. And when you actually
Yes.
pay attention, every single thing they're doing at the monastery is like for compassion. Like every chant, every meal is like offered for the suffering of other beings. Everything is like the whole foundation of the practice is to liberate oneself in order to help other beings. So even though the method seems so much different, it's really the same things, doing
Yeah.
the same
You
things.
go deep enough down any path or deep enough into any practice, it should all take you to the same place. It will
Yeah.
eventually. And I
Yeah.
find that, and that's part of knowing, that is also what gives me this kind of feeling of knowing that everybody is on their own path, on their own journey at different points, and that it's okay. I
Yeah.
used to like argue and be like, okay, no, you're wrong about that thing. I'm like, no, no, you're on your way to the same place. You're just taking a different road, and you're going to learn things I didn't learn. It's so interesting.
Yeah. That is interesting. And I love how for us, I think for me, through Ramdas and maybe for you, like I'm so grateful that because of him, and maybe it was just inherent in me anyway, but he helped me to like be able to learn these different like paths and traditions and practices without having to I don't know, pick one to say mine was the right one and someone else's was wrong. Like he helped me to see what I felt in my heart was already true, like what you're saying, Um and that it's okay if someone else thinks that like no, this way is the only way, like that's okay. But I feel that I can comfortably now like be open about like oneness and unity and really like, just express that that is the truth for me, and what I feel like I'm here to share.
Mm. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, I'd say I found the same thing through Ramdas. I had when I initially found Ramdas, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that, but you mean, coming from Christianity, I kind of like separated from that. I went total atheist for a little while, and it was a lot of meditation during Buddhism. Actually, I'll tell you this, because we were talking about Christ recently, you and I,
Yeah.
and this is interesting. I still had very intense Christian thoughts. You know, like I was really caught in the thought space, all of the theology of that. So I try to separate myself from that. And I constantly go like, because I was raised with this, how do I know this is my path? How do I know that I actually chose this? Because never given the opportunity. Am I just worshiping my own social conditioning was basically the question I was asking. And but I had this deep love and I kind of didn't feel like I'd ever separate myself from that. And I was reading a book by Osho, thanks to the Netflix documentary about the cult, Wild Wild Country.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is crazy, but this guy says some things that sound interesting. So I bought one of his books,
Mhm.
Being in Love, I think. And I was reading that. It got me into meditation. And I was sitting at work one day. I was on a break, sitting outside by myself, and I was meditating. And I open my eyes, and there's this light. This is being of light standing to my right, almost like a beam, like a pillar of light, but with some like human form. And I look at it, and I see Jesus. I see Christ, and he goes to me. He said, "You need to let go of me." And
Whoa.
I was like, what is this? I'm sitting here meditating on letting go. And then I see this with my own eyes, and I hear, you need to let go of me. And then he said, I'm not insecure. I can take it. And
Wow.
he said, I'll be all right. It
Like,
wasn't, you'll be all right. He was like, I'll be all right. And then
like,
he
because
just,
you almost felt like it could have been like a betrayal or something.
right, right. And then he disappeared. And I just sat there and I just cried. I was just crying. And I was like, was that real? How much time do I have left on my break? 10 minutes. Okay, I'm just gonna cry for a while. And and that was a real turning point for me because it allowed me to go, I can let go. Because he as a figure was so central to my life, I realize now that he's the only one I could have taken that instruction from. Nobody else could have told me you need to let go. No other being, no other guru, nothing. I had to hear it from the guy. So there he
Wow.
appears. The divine decides to appear to me in this form and tell me you need to go searching. And that's what kind of launched me into this new journey. And I just decided to stop believing in everything for a while. I was like convincing myself I made this all up. It's all in my own mind. And I went to LA to tour Disney Studios. I was trying to get an animation job there. And while I was there, I stayed with a friend who introduced me to mushrooms. And I sat on the floor of their like apartment in the middle of like, we just had the most fun time. It was a fun mushroom trip. It wasn't like you're not going to experience anything deep. It wasn't that. It was just like, we're going to party. So here's some shrooms. But in the middle of the party, I'm somewhere else also. I'm like hanging out, we're laughing, we're talking, we're having regular conversations about life. But the other, like the real me, that's surface level me.
Yeah.
Deeper me is like noticing I'm connected to the entire earth. I'm feeling like waterfalls happening on the other side of the earth, and I'm feeling rain clouds forming, and I'm feeling the roots of trees like stretching. And then I'm hearing this voice just saying, we've got you, we love you, like you are loved and you are held. And so then it felt so big and so real with just the tiniest bit of mushrooms. They were like, that you didn't have enough to have that experience. That it felt so real. I was like, I need to, I don't know, there's something else. There's something, God is here. God is something. And I don't not believe in God anymore.
Yeah.
um, and I don't know how, but I ended up listening to Ram Dass at work, and I found the Be Here, the Here and Now podcast. And I just started turning it on, listening to it while I'm animating. I'm working on Star Wars games and The Last of Us 2. So like these sci-fi and like extremely violent games about revenge and death and suffering. And in the middle of it, Ram Dass is just playing through my head, and I'm animating scenes of people suffering. Meanwhile, I'm listening to him talk about suffering as Grister the Mill. And it just started like getting into me because what I'm doing is breaking my heart open, and all of his words are falling in. And it turned
Wow.
into but he opened me up to what I had toward Christianity for a while there, even in the midst of all that, was wanting so badly for other people to break free because I felt like I was experiencing spirituality in a deeper way. I wanted other people to experience that. So I'm going back to my friends and my family, and I'm like, you need to be free of your shackles. Take the blinders off. This isn't all there is. And I wanted to teach them so badly. And meanwhile, Ram Dass is there teaching, giving teachings from all traditions, including Christianity. And he really softened my heart toward that and as part of it, and allowed me to kind of come back around to it and revisit it in a new way and stop trying to change my Christian friends.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, you've really had some incredible, I mean, from the Jesus to the mushrooms to the Ram Dass and the heart opening with the suffering. Yeah, that's all incredible. And as you know, and I've talked to you too about the Jesus is like it's been like that for me. Not exactly the same because I was never like super steeped in Christianity, even though I grew up Orthodox Christian. So even from the beginning of my spiritual journey, I was kind of studying like the gospels of like Thomas and Mary, like the ones that were left out of the Bible and found of like Mary Magdalene and stuff. But um yeah, in the past year, or I don't know time frame, that's hard to say, but like in recent times, I've been so pulled in to the love of Jesus, or I usually say Yeshua since that's like the Aramaic or how he
Yes.
said. But it's so just powerful and profound and like I told you I watched the Passion of the Christ and the combination of the love and the suffering was just like I was like sobbing and it was just like opening my heart and it was
Mm.
incredible, you know. But like Maharaji, Neem Curly Baba would say, like Christ and Hanuman are one.
Yes, right. It was, and so that's the other cool thing when I start getting into like Hindu texts and things like that, and reading the Bhagavad Gita for the first time, and that changed my life. I felt like the book was, I say it felt like it was already in my heart before I read it, all of it. Like, I felt like I was reading something that wasn't outside of me. It was all in here. And that in it, I saw no difference between Christ as I knew Christ and Krishna, and it just everything just was so harmonious and so beautiful. And so I like to say that too, but I say Christ and Krishna are one.
Ah, yes. Yes.
So beautiful. It's so so beautiful. I mean, you could use any names. It all it all works.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. And I love what you said about the suffering too, like with Ram Dass's thing, because um that was one of the things I learned most from him. Oh, I don't know. I learned it from him. The Buddha always says it too, which Ram Dass would aptly quote. Like how he's like, there's just suffering like everywhere and everything all the time. And like you scratch whether it's rich people, poor people, like plants, animals, like sickness, anything. Um, but how he talks about embracing it in order to be free, like with your video games it reminded me like when I see movies and stuff that are really cruel, it's like, or I was reading about this book called King Leopold's Ghost and he was like the king of Belgium and he basically got more people killed in the Congo of Africa than like died in the Holocaust like in the
Wow.
late 1800s and like barely anyone knows about it and like he never stepped foot there himself but he took it over with like his own private army, not even really the Belgian government, even though he was the king. And just like disgusting, terrible things, they did there to people, like making them, slaves and like eating rubber and killing them and their families and chains. And just, it was a, horrendous, like horrendous book. And people are like, why do you read that? But it's weird because some part of me, like, it's not that I go all into those books and stuff, but I feel like it's another part of my like spiritual practice is like I have to
Mm.
open up to some of these like things that make me shudder that I couldn't imagine like happening to me or like to my family. And like if we are all one, like it is kind of happening to us. Um, so it's
Yeah.
hard to like embrace that.
Yeah. I love that too. Ram Dass used to talk about that. I love the video where he says, um, if you ask me, am I happy in this moment? Yes, I am happy. If you ask me if I'm sad in this moment, yes, I am sad, because the happiness and the sadness all coexist. It's all happening right now. Like, is there's a child being born at this moment. That's beautiful. That's a happy thing. And there's a child starving somewhere else in the world at this moment. That's sad. And both of those things are existing right now. And I can be aware of those things and hold all of it. He's like, because it's all present. It's all present in this moment. And this moment is so rich at once. And then he asked the question, this isn't from the same talk, but with the knowledge of the child who is starving, do you throw the frisbee?
Yeah.
And what? Because how dare you have fun? How dare you enjoy life and the richness of life while someone else is suffering? But if you don't throw the frisbee, what do you have to offer to the child who's taking his first breath? And you have to embrace all of it. As long as you're pushing one thing away or clinging to one thing, you're just caught, and you're caught in the suffering and being used by the suffering in a maybe a way that's ultimately refining, but not, always.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have to be able to hold all of it, and that was big for me. And while I'm learning this, I was working on the game I was working on was The Last of Us 2. And it is about a girl who loses basically her father, her adopted father, and she goes out on this, just through her grief, through all the pain she's experiencing and all that was like left unsaid between them, that this life and the moments they didn't have yet were stolen, and he's all she had, and she's going to go out on this revenge journey. And so you have to live through her journey of revenge, but it's not fun. It's painful, and the game is designed to make you feel her pain, and designed to make you realize that nothing she does to get the revenge that she thinks she needs is going to make it better.
Whoa.
And so it's ultimately, the game is about having to let go of the worst thing, and it's about what love can do to you, like the dark side of love. It's beautiful. So getting to experience making that while learning all of these things was a profound experience. I still play that game and I weep. I just weep the whole
Wow.
time. So what it does too, if a little bit of a spoiler, but about halfway through the game, the person you spent the first 15 to 20 hours trying to kill, you switch perspectives and you have to live through their entire story. So you get to see why she did what she did. And you have to walk the entire journey, the length of the journey, in your enemy's shoes. And then at the end, you're put back in the shoes of your main character, and you have to decide, do you kill your enemy? So it is a quite the social experiment and journey, and I'm very proud of that one still. Obviously I didn't write it, but I was meant to work on
You
it.
worked on it though? Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's incredible, man. And I love how you mentioned that because it's like shows that when you're on a spiritual path and like looking for God and doing your sadhana, like it becomes everything that in everything that you do, like in a game or it's like because it is everything, So there's the universe is like teaching you in all these different ways, right? And if we want to be free, like you're saying, like what Ramdas is saying, we have to go through all of it, including what would be called the darkness or like the light.
absolutely. It's and then from that I got plunged into working on Call of Duty, which was the most painful experience.
You worked on Call of Duty?
Yeah. The Vanguard. So it was a World War II themed game, and it was pretty cool to do, but so painful. It was the most painful experience because I was having to be exposed to extreme suffering. And I did this, a lot of it, to myself. I was trying to recreate like the horrors and tragedy of war. So I immersed myself in it in order to do that. And for that game, I had a little more ability to like influence what the characters were doing in the stories, and working with a story team, and bouncing back and forth between departments. It was really cool. But
Oh,
having to witness and embrace all of that pain and suffering, that and this isn't just like, I was constantly reminded, I'm not just making a video game. This actually happened. We were replicating actual battles that took place, and it was so awful. And so I got to experience suffering in one way with one project and at one point, and then this was a point where I got totally mentally tortured by where I was denying at that point my human experience and just like I am totally spirit, I am not the body, that kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
And doing that while working on this game and watching actual footage of people die to replicate things for the game, I was putting myself through trauma in my body without knowing it. It was screwing with my mind. It messed with my actual nervous system. And I was having panic attacks every day, which didn't happen for me before.
Wow,
And
you really went
totally,
through it.
yeah, totally dissociating from my body too. And this was, I thought this was the worst experience. Coming back from that, I ended up leaving work and going to through intensive therapy for months. Uh,
Whoa, because of
yeah,
that?
it was 4 days a week for I don't remember how many hours a day. I was in therapy going through mindfulness training. This introduced me to mindfulness, reintroducing myself to my body and becoming embodied. And then this was what I realized I didn't realize before, but now I know I needed to learn to be in my body, to be human. And then all of life was just pushing me into just learning the lesson of just be human, like embrace your humanity into it. It's not all about getting high, because at that point I was just trying to get out of my human experience. And now I get to see through the lens of that experience that all of it is part of the spiritual experience, that it is all grist for the mill, that I was being processed. I was being put through this process of being totally shattered and then reformed so that I could have a new perspective. And yeah, so yeah, I can get really into suffering. It got bad for a while.
That's yeah, and ultimately that's such grace. But yeah, that's intense. See who would have known working on Call of Duty Vanguard World War II version. Um,
Right.
no, it makes perfect sense. And Ram Dass always talked about that too, like how he always tried to, for a long time tried to push away his humanity and thought it was
Mhm.
like an error and a mistake, and then realized that this too, that we have to embrace this too.
Yeah.
Man, that's
Why don't
some
you try
incredible.
being human? That's what he'd
What?
say. He'd always say, "Why don't you try being human?"
Yeah.
Or that's what Emmanuel said to him, I think.
Yeah. Why don't you? Yeah, is that what Emmanuel said to him? Yeah. Yeah. And then he had a funny story once when he was like drinking with Alan Watts. He said the famous philosopher in like a Benedictine monastery or something. And he was like, he's like, Alan Watts was like, you know what your problem is, Dick? He's like, you're too attached to emptiness.
That's it. Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Oh, I love that. I mean, you get into his early stuff and you hear that attachment to emptiness, and you get into the later stuff, you hear him being a little more grounded in mindfulness sort of things. And I love his stuff into the 90s. Like in I talked to I had dinner once with Dasima at the retreat, and she asked me, she was like, what are your favorite Dasima was Ram Dass's caretaker, for anybody who doesn't know that. And she said, what's your favorite Ram Dass era? I love that she asked that question. I was like, early to mid 90s, and she went, me too.
Really?
That was great. And but during that time he was really, I feel, getting into, he would talk about living right on that line between the form and the formless, where you're not totally in one, totally in the other. It's the combination of the two that is the totality of the experience. And I really love
Yeah.
that. I keep that in mind every single day.
That's incredible. And it makes sense because he like, did the one aspect, like the psychedelics and came to India and then and then for all those years in between, probably like the late 70s and 80s, he was like doing all that humanitarian work with like the blind and in South America and like Ben and Jerry's and all that
Yeah,
conscious,
right.
really getting like involved. And then so he like blended those, or I mean, not blended, but yeah, seen like both. And I like the Heart Sutra in Buddhism that says emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness.
I love that. That can send me off into other places when I think about it. It's so good.
Yeah.
I love the translation that says boundlessness too, that they shared at the retreats.
I,
So I love the term emptiness now. When I first was getting into all of this stuff, the term emptiness was terrifying to me because it implies that there's nothing there, and maybe there isn't. But the term boundlessness, I mean, they're two one and the same. It's the exact same thing, and oh, both of them.
yeah, I'm actually so happy you said that because I was thinking of if I should say that, and then you said it because that's my favorite translation by Roshi Joanne Halifax
That's
and
it.
Heart Sutra. I love how it uses it, and I think it makes it easier for people to understand, like if we're not steeped in like Buddhism or like that tradition, and they're like, what does this mean? Like everything's empty, which are
Mm.
it's the same, but you could also boundless is a good word to think of it. Like we're boundless, like all things are boundlessness. Like boundlessness is the nature of
Yeah.
all things.
Oh, that's good. I was just about to explain this to a friend in a Facebook comment because he was asking me. I said something about how um, just enlightening it was when I realized that the same God I worshipped in Christianity was the same as, you know, the God I met through Hinduism was the same as the nothingness I experienced in atheism was the same. And he was like, how is that possible? How is the nothingness and God the same? And I was like, how to explain this? I don't think you can to somebody who doesn't know. There's just an experience that has to be gone through for you to see the emptiness and the form as one thing. And
Yeah,
it can't be understood in the mind. You can't get really into that stuff in philosophy, but it only takes you so far.
truly, yeah. The
Yeah.
analytical mind can't. I've been listening to a lot of Ramakrishna's gospel, and he really taught that was what he came to show was that all of these that all was one, and he did his Kali devotion, but then he started studying with like the Muslims and the Christians and everything, and to see all these paths came out the same place. But he would say things like, well, if you like the formless aspect of God, he's like, worship that. And he's like, if you think it's form, he's like, then worship that. He's like, if you're not sure, he's like, then just do both of them and be not sure. He's like, it's gonna be
Yeah.
okay. Like, like however you want to do it, it's fine. But
I had a
yeah.
thought today that I didn't share with anyone, but I'll share it with you. And the thought was that I was thinking about the old way that I used to approach the concept of God and how distant God felt from that and how little experience or true knowledge I had through that lens of separation. And I had the thought that to see God totally through the lens of separation as something separate from you, as in not entwined with you, one with you in some way,
Mhm.
is actually a very active form of atheism in a way. This is an interesting thought. You just play with it. Because if you're putting it as something separate from you, you're separating yourself from the ability to experience what God is. So it's actually, I don't know. I can't put, let me just read what I wrote because it's actually going to be better than me trying to say it.
Please.
Ah, yes, to believe that God is something outside of you that exists separately from you entirely is actually the truest form of atheism in action. So long as what you're looking for is outside of you, you will never find it. Therefore, in your belief, through your belief in something, you've separated yourself from the knowledge of it. Just now we're back into the realm of philosophy and heavy thought, and we can let all that go now. But there's just a thought that I
Yeah,
was.
that no, thanks for that makes it makes a lot of sense because it's like ultimately in some subconscious way like would keep oneself forever distant from experiencing
Mm,
that. And I think that is important for us to convey that, like, in our bhakti tradition and in these like Ramdas always taught and everything, that ultimately, you know ultimately God is us, is each and every one of us. And that's how
right.
I always approach, like, that's like when I go to India and stuff, and I always tell people, like, when we go to the temples and everything, and they've never, like, been to those temples and done like devotion to a like pranam, like bow to a deity or a statue. I'm like, just remember that ultimately it is yourself that you're bowing and worshiping and honoring the divine. in you, and like, and it is a living essence of that with power, but that yeah, I think the basis has to be starting from knowing that it is us, and then through bhakti it's like we love and devote to everything and everyone, but it's all one thing, you know. So
Yes. And you find this through every tradition in different
yeah.
ways. And going back to Christianity, I see it even more clearly that I and the Father are one. The body is the temple of the Spirit. You know, that God lives in everybody in all, literally says as all and in all, or uh yeah, Christ is all and is in all. So
Yeah, it does.
you have all of that there, and then once you see it, you're like, oh, it was so obvious. It was, I had all the ingredients, I didn't make the cake. And
Yeah, yeah. And then when you see it, it makes sense. I love how in for anyone who's not familiar, in the Ramayana, the story of Ram, which is a
Mhm.
incarnation of God in India, when Hanuman, and Ramdas often quoted this, that Hanuman would say, when I know who I am, or no, when I don't know who I am, I serve Ram, I serve God. And when I know who I am you. I am.
Mm, that's right. That's so good. Oh, I love that. I really love that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Come on. You can learn a lot from him.
definitely. Do you sing the Hanuman Chalisa?
Every day. Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, I've almost gotten to the point where I know it all without having to look at the words. So it's real nice.
That's incredible. Me and Jade, that's our favorite song. And I, when I went to India, I felt like she really initiated me into it. I just was singing it all the time, and it plays in my head like all day now. But I don't know it by heart. I gotta follow the song or just parts of it play.
Yeah,
But it's so incredible. It's so
it
such a
is.
beautiful, powerful thing.
I didn't understand why I was so drawn to it when I first the first retreat we were at. I didn't totally, I wasn't on board with everything. I just knew that Ram Dass had spoken straight into my heart and pulled me there. And I wanted to go to his retreat the year prior when he passed away. Well, to the prior retreat, it was a couple years before because of COVID.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, and I put it off, and then he passed away 2 weeks after the retreat, and I just remember sitting there going like, I'm not gonna miss this next one. I can't, like, I couldn't, I just couldn't. I had to go. And there were still things that didn't vibe with me. I didn't understand Maharaji. I didn't know why people were so crazy about this little bald guy. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, they're doing like pranam. They're like totally, they're just bowing to his picture, and I didn't get it. I had no space for that in my awareness at the time, and
Huh.
it actually made me angry because I didn't understand it. Uh, I know, I get it now. Now I get
Yeah,
it. There's a
that's a
whole
big
story
point.
behind that I won't launch into, but
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
it took some getting into, and the Hanuman Chalisa was one of those things where I didn't get it in the moment, but then I went home and it would play. I didn't know the words, but it would play in my head, and I was going, what is it with this chant? I have no idea. And I'd pick it up and I'd listen to it and I'd start reading and saying it, and I don't know, it got into me before I understood it, which is a great way to experience things. You don't
Yeah.
always need to understand it before it gets into you. You can do it the other way around.
Jade said the same same thing. She said she asked Maharaji to help her learn it through her heart,
Oh,
which is like,
yes.
it's so incredible. I mean, sometimes I just cry like as soon as it starts, as soon as I hear it, and you just, the
Yeah.
more you can just feel like the power and significance, and like how this mantra has been chanted for who knows how long, and like, or just like such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not just, yeah, like you're saying, who knows how long they've been chanting it. There's a lineage to it. In a way, when you say it, you're kind of reaching back through time,
Yes.
and you're connecting with all the people who've also said it. There's this
Yeah.
really cool something that happens, um that it happens more in the heart than the head, so you can't really explain it perfectly, but I'm right
Yeah.
there.
When we were at Kainchi, we went down there one morning to the Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba ashram in India, and we were there like a couple hours before it opened in the morning, just sitting outside the gates. And it was incredible because we started singing the Hanuman Chalisa, and by that time, other people had came to wait to get in, and they all started singing it with us, and then we sang it like three times, and everyone was singing it, and it was just, it was a really beautiful thing to be able to do, and with the Indian people, because it's like the song from their tradition. It was just really incredible. It was cool.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
One of these days I'd like to go to Kimchi. My dad actually has been asking, he the other day asked if I'd like to go to India with him, I think next year, and which would be really cool. He's a Christian pastor, and so he wants to go for different reasons than I do, but I was like, let's figure out together how we can do all the things that we both are interested in and learn from each other. And I can tell you about the things we're going to see, and you can tell me about the places we're going to see. He wants to go, like, I didn't know this until like last year. I think some of the apostles, I mean, it's believed that even Jesus, after all the events in the Bible, after the resurrection, went and lived out the rest of his life in India. There's accounts of that, and
Hmm.
lots in India seem to believe that. And
Yeah,
but
they do.
what we do know for sure is that the apostles, the disciples of Jesus, many of them went and lived in India. Several of them did for the rest of their lives, and were
Oh,
even killed
really?
there. Or, yeah, there. I can't remember exactly which one it is. Maybe Peter. I'm not sure. One of them went to India and was actually went into a village and was actually killed there for what he was preaching, what he was teaching to people. He was killed with a spear, and on the site where he was buried, there is now a cathedral, like a church. And my dad wants to go there where he is buried, and
Whoa,
my dad wants to worship there. He wants to like experience that. Um,
that's incredible.
I want to do that. I also want to go to Kinchi, you know.
Yeah, you'll make it there for sure. You'll make it there. I know it depends where you go because India is such a vast country. It's like I want to go all these places, then you get there and it's like
It's
it's a
huge.
big country. It's just like being in like going to Chicago, but also wanting to go to Arizona,
Right.
Uh,
Or just Texas, which is the most dumb big state. Not dumb as in stupid, but stupid big.
yeah,
If
yeah, and shaped funny.
you're ever taking a cross-country trip and you have to go through Texas, my God, God help you. Because it's easy. One state after another. You're going one, there's another one, and then you're in Texas for like 3 days of driving. Gosh. And then it goes back to normal again. One state, there's another state. Okay, it's easy. But that 3 days feels so long, or
That's
however long it.
definitely how India is.
Yeah. India, they're similarly shaped in some ways also.
Yeah, they are. That's funny. Well, yeah, I know you'll end up there for sure when the time's right, but I hope you do go with your dad.
When the time's right. I have this belief that I'm like meant to go there or have been there, whether it was some past life experience or something. I also, when Krishna Das, I think it was at one of the retreats, he talked about having this, he feels like he was aiming for India when his soul was going to like incarnate on Earth, and he just took a wrong turn and ended up in the United States. And I've been able to so visualize that I now have a memory of doing the same thing. Just I need to get back to India.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
not a memory, it's an
if you
implanted
said that,
thought.
yeah, if you said the Gita's in your heart, you probably were. I mean, yeah, Krishna Das said when he landed in India, he felt like he was home, and Trevor Hall said the same thing. And I always say the same thing. I feel like I've lived more lifetimes in there than here. But for whatever reason, there's apparently a huge sangha satsang that of India people that's now born Americans.
Right. And that,
Which is like interesting. But Ramdas always said too, it's like the heat of the fire sometimes out here, like how he talked about living in New York. Like if we can get free while living in a society that's often dominated by, like the vanity, like
yes.
wealth, greed, attention on not important things, and sexual desire, and all these really strong pulls. And it's like really a strong fire of purification here. And he's like, if you can get free hair, then like, or like in the streets of New York, you can be free anywhere.
Absolutely. That's really good. And then you don't have to take a bus to Detroit if you're already in Detroit.
Yeah.
Another great quote I always like.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, man. I love
Yeah.
everything that you shared, and I'm so happy that that you spent this time with us. I can't wait to be able to share it with others. Is there anything else you wanted to tell us or convey to us?
Mm, not a thing.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.